Meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the City Commission. It's to hear budget subsidy requests for 2012. We'll note that Commissioners Jackson, Steiner, and Johnson are present. Commissioners Oltmans and Frenzel are absent. And the first presentation we're going to hear is from Theodore Roosevelt Regional Airport, and we would ask that if there's a representative from Theodore Roosevelt Airport, you come to the podium, identify yourself, and we'll hear your presentation.
Matthew Armenzi, Airport Manager, representing the airport. The subsidy request, thank you for taking the request afterwards as well. Thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here this afternoon. The Dickinson Airport has been working since last year when we made the subsidy request, working on the hangar and looking at different avenues to get the design and engineering accomplished at a lower cost, because we noticed that was a very high cost. Through the process, there have been some other hangars that have been bid in the region, specifically Lemon, South Dakota, and they have seen that the cost for a hangar is not going to be what we had originally estimated, that $500,000 to $600,000 range. They're now talking that the cost per square foot is going to be closer to $60 to $70, and that is reflected in the new estimate, which is approximately $800,000. There's also been some new regulations with the Federal Aviation Administration. We are no longer able to abut the hangar directly to the ramp. There now has to be a buffer zone there. So now we're looking at approximately $100,000 for a ramp. So with the additional cost, the cost estimate for the hangar is now closer to $800,000. And as we've looked at the new cost with the projected revenues and everything, we are going to have to get additional grants. Currently, the city has provided a $100,000 grant, and Mike Crestis for an additional $100,000 grant to help with the cost of the hangar. The Airport Authority also, with its reserves, is able now to put in $275,000 instead of the $225,000 that we had anticipated putting in. So with the additional funding, we're also going to go back to Start Development and request funding from them as well. I've spoken with Galen briefly on that. And also, once we actually bid the hangar and know what our costs are, we're going to go back to both Billings and Dunn County and request additional funding from them as well. So once we get all the funding together, we should be able to take out a loan for these $75,000 to $80,000 that we had anticipated, where our operating budget will still cover the cost of the loan. So my request is for $100,000. If you guys have any questions, I would certainly address those at this time.
So would you be, is that the extent of your request then for this hangar, is the $100,000 that we've already approved for this year plus $100,000 out of our 2012 budget?
Correct. Based on the spreadsheet and the numbers that I've run, if I could get $100,000 from the city again, and then $100,000 from the Start Development Corporation and then the other counties, plus what the airport's putting in from its reserves, that should be enough where we can get our loan down to where it's sustainable with the operating costs.
Okay. So your intent would not to be to come back to us for budget year 2013 for another $100,000?
My hope is no. So, and I think with the new estimate, it's based off a project that was bid this summer in Lemon, South Dakota. They bid an 80 by 80, and it was approximately $550,000. With some add alternates and stuff like that, it came close to $600,000. But now that's what they're basing. Excuse me. That's what they're now basing the estimate off of. So
you've got close to $600,000 of cash in money markets and savings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming some of that would support that $275,000 then that you're going to...
Correct. A portion of that will support the $275,000, and then with the city mills that we would receive a majority of the mills in February, March, and April. And we build up our account, and then we don't get any tax money, we just get our operating revenues, and then we take out of that as well. I believe there's still approximately $85,000 to $90,000 that will still come out of that just for our operating budget this year.
What other types of capital expenditures would you use this money for?
The airport actually just approved purchase of a snow blower. That is going to be $60,000. Our current snow blower is a 1972 model, and you can't keep up anymore. And what we did was we went to state surplus and were able to purchase a snow blower to replace our current snow blower, and hopefully that'll make us more efficient with snow removal operations.
You're not really sitting on a bunch of excess cash then?
No. After I figured for my airport authority meeting, our special meeting that we had last week for the approval of snow blower, I think when all our capital projects are said after 2011, including the hangar, the terminal project, we have a land project coming up that's going to run the airport about $10,000. We have crack sealing this year. When everything's said and done, we'll be right in between $200,000 and $230,000 left in our reserves, which we feel we need in there because that's about 50% of our operating budget.
Are there any questions?
Mr. President, just one question. You have no future plans for parking?
Yes, the parking lot is being constructed this summer. We actually just signed the contract for that. The city is providing us a loan, and then with our entitlements next year, we're paying back the city.
You don't currently charge for?
No, we don't charge for parking. We did a study last summer, and we're going to need approximately 150 cars average to sustain the loan that we would need, because the FAA, any funding that they give us cannot be used for revenue producing items such as a parking lot. So in order for us to start charging parking, we'd have to pay that money back. And currently we owe approximately $185,000 back to the FAA, and when we figured that into the loan, it was about 150 cars, and we're just not there yet.
Thank you.
Matt, the employment figures are taking you into a new place with federal dollars, correct? But I suspect those federal dollars can't be used for a hangar like this?
That is correct.
You put them into runways and...
Yeah, we cannot put the $1 million entitlements cannot go toward hangars.
Okay.
Because hangars are 100% revenue producing.
Okay. And maybe for the benefit of everybody, maybe repeat the effect that this structure will have on our commercial air service, what you're hoping that it will do.
During the winter, there are times where that aircraft will not start. We experienced it several times this winter where the cold weather will affect the aircraft, the hydraulics, the electrical system, the engines, and that plane will not go. If we were to have this hangar, it would allow for us to be able to put the airline's aircraft in the hangar so it is not affected by the elements and it's ready to go right away in the morning. So our passengers will get to Denver on time.
Well, I see it as a real critical thing for our community with the air service. I mean, it's a real critical element of the community anyway, just the air service, and this is going to help a lot. I hope you're building it big enough.
I think we are. This will handle, I looked at it, this will also handle an RJ if we ever were to get one of those in the future. So it is large enough to handle an RJ and the average large transient aircraft that we have.
Yeah, and when do you hope to bid this again?
We signed the contract for design. We should be able to bid it within 45 days.
Okay. So
This summer we will have it bid.
okay.
And at that time we'll know exactly what our costs are going to be.
Any other comments or questions? We'll welcome Commissioner Frenzel to the meeting, and the clerk will note that he showed up about 1:05, so he's here. Anything else?
No? All right.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
For the
Thanks,
opportunity.
man.
Good luck with your hangar.
President Johnson, Ms. Pechtold is not going to make it, and so she's asked me to present on her behalf.
Okay, and this is for Arts on the Prairie?
That's correct. As you can see in your packets, the application or request for funding is for $8,000. That has been a consistent requested amount. Our records indicate since at least 2009 that we have granted the $8,000 amount as requested, so that's stayed the same. They use these funds. I should also mention that the Arts on the Prairie does maintain an office in our Public Works building right now. We allow them to use that office free of charge, so we do donate in kind to this organization as well. We don't charge them rent or utilities for staying and using that office. Some of the things that they do with this money includes annual programming, including the outdoor concert series that's held at the Bandshell. They also use it for the Missoula Children's Theater. They essentially are an arts programming group. They try to bring arts programming to the young and to the old by virtue of the Bandshell and their other activities. In her words, our programming provides quality family entertainment as well as valuable learning experiences for area children. They do get money from the North Dakota Council of Arts. They do charge admission on some of their events. They do accept donations and do some minor fundraisers. They do all of this on a rather slim budget. Their total assets are less than $15,000. Their revenues are about the same, and their expenditures, they anticipate being about 24. So that's kind of a breakdown of their application. I'm sure I didn't do the justice that Mr. Peck or Mrs. Pechtold would have done, but that would be their presentation.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Kessel?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kessel, do you know, it looks like they must be taking a bunch of money from the reserves this year. It looks like this request amounts to something just under 50% of their anticipated revenue, but their expenditures are significantly more than that. Do you know anything about that?
I'm assuming they're taking those dollars out of their investment accounts. That's the only dollars that I'm aware of.
They have listed just over $10,000 in other expenses. That's a pretty high category for other. Do you know what those other expenses are?
President Johnson, I do not. No. I was really hoping that Commissioner Oltmans, he is involved with Arts on the Prairie, would be here today to help assist with this presentation, but I don't know. Can't answer that question. It's an answer I could get for you, but don't know it at this time.
It's possible that's essentially a one-time expenditure, but I don't know. I mean, maybe you could get that answer.
I can certainly try to do that. I can tell you that we have had the conversation with Ms. Pechtold about finding a different location since we anticipate the construction of a Public Works building sometime in the near future. So I do know that they are looking for a place to house their operations. I believe they've been in contact with Mr. Kramer from Park and Rec, and they may be using a building out on the former golf course that we used to own, or still own, but that the golf course is going to program. So it could be related to expenses with that structure and some refurbishment, but I just don't know. I'll have to find that out.
It's a pretty definite number when you get down to 64 cents along 10,000, so they must have something going on.
Mm-hmm. I'll find out and report back.
Okay. Well, normally Arts on the Prairie has done a much better job of presenting. you know. the-
Well, you know, if you don't give them the funding they've got in the past, it's going to be my fault.
Okay, well, RSVP is next. I see somebody out in the lobby area. I don't know if that could be them or not.
I was going to say during Mr. Remenzi's remarks, I was glad to see you asking those longer-term questions. Since your term doesn't extend to that length, I was glad you were asking. Maybe that's an indicator of things to come.
No, it's just, every commissioner up here thinks beyond the end of their term, you know. so.
Good.
Okay. Are you from RSVP?
They're actually coming. I'm going to pass some stuff up. Is that okay if I do that now?
Well, you have to identify yourself at the podium before you can do
Oh,
that.
I do?
Yes?
I'm Chelsea Mann, and I'm from RSVP.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
We are taping this, so all of your fans out there will see you now.
Where's the rest of your party?
They are just outside in the hallway.
Okay. Yeah, it's a more effective presentation if they do it from inside.
Thank you.
Well, the only one old enough up here to be an RSVP volunteer is Commissioner Frenzel.
That's right.
I was wondering which name was going to come out there.
And I was going to do that, but I won't have time now.
Yeah. Well, you will in a year.
Oh, good.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Beverly Heffley, and I'm the coordinator of RSVP Plus. And here today with me are Bob Sivak, who is the vice chair of our advisory council, and also Chelsea Mann, who is our AmeriCorps Vista. RSVP Plus is a federally and locally funded program that connects agencies with needs to volunteers with skills. Formerly known as RSVP, the plus signifies the elimination of its age requirement. We can recruit volunteers of any age now, not just 55 and older, but yet our main focus is on the 55 and older. Our mission, RSVP Plus North Dakota, invites individuals of all ages to enhance personal growth, develop leadership skills, and meet critical community needs through meaningful volunteer service opportunities. We currently have 316 volunteers enrolled in our program, and of those, 164 of those are volunteers from the Dickinson area over the age of 55. Last year, these volunteers put in 25,659 hours at nonprofits in the area, thus saving our area nonprofits over $422,860. 43 volunteers under the age of 55 put in 2,211 hours, saving our nonprofits $36,437. You will find our volunteers helping throughout the community. You will see them working at the arcade, helping at the Red Cross fundraisers, helping at the Halloween party at the local nursing home, visiting people in the nursing home, and playing a game of cards with the residents. You will also see them helping at the local fire department, helping at the local congregate meal sites, working at the local bookstore that supports the library, scooping ice cream for United Way. You will find our volunteers are doing a lot of different things at numerous nonprofits in our area, and without this help, some of our nonprofits might not be able to do the things in our community. Our program is important in that it is keeping our over 55 volunteers active in their community, being involved and engaged. Our core volunteer base is the 55 and older, and likely will always be the older adults. With the ability to recruit volunteers under the age of 55, we are seeing our older volunteers taking their grandchildren to volunteer with them. We have a volunteer couple who takes their grandson to volunteer at the arcade. We also have a volunteer who takes his grandson to help stock goodies for the firemen at the fire station. This is a great opportunity to engage our next generation of volunteers, because if we don't have our older volunteers mentoring younger volunteers on the importance of volunteering, where will our community and nonprofits be in the future? Right now I'm going to have Bob Sivak, who's our vice chair of our advisory council, say a few words.
President Johnson, Commissioners, it's been my great pleasure to be a part of the RSVP organization as a board member for the past several years, and it's also given new meaning to the word, don't show up for a meeting and you'll get elected. But it has been a good experience. They're good stewards of the money, and as a board member, I want to thank the Commission for past consideration. I also would like to point out that we're not asking for an increase, consideration of the same dollar amount that you've given in the past. And I can testify that we are good stewards of the money. The investment, the return that's given back to the community by engaging the community one-on-one like the volunteers of RSVP do is a very strong statement of how they operate and how they keep the community involved and keep the community on the forefront. We benefit from that at the fire department, like you heard. We have a RSVP member that comes and helps us with some tasks up in the volunteer quarters as far as stocking some items and things like that. So not only do I have the ability to judge them from the point of view of being a board member, but also on the receiving end of what they do for the community also. Also, they are working towards becoming self-sufficient. They have a store that I'm sure you're going to probably be hearing a little bit more about, that they're trying to do things to generate their own income. So again, thank you for your past consideration, and please give us that consideration again.
Any questions here? How has the oil impact here, the energy impact in Dickinson, affected your organization?
It really hasn't affected it. We don't see a lot of the people working in the oil field coming to volunteer unless we see that in the future with, if they bring their families up here, maybe the wives and the children would be interested in volunteering. But right now, we don't see any increase in that.
Do you see any fewer volunteers because people might be deciding to work longer since there's more job opportunities?
We're seeing a few of our volunteers, basically just aging out of our program just because they're, have health issues, things like that. But we're always trying to recruit more volunteers of the age 55 and older. We do see some of our volunteers, just because things are expensive at this time, having to possibly get a part-time job or needing extra money.
Another question, comment? Mr. Kessler?
President Johnson, I'm curious, on the AmeriCorps side, did any of this funding go to assist that program at all?
No.
Okay. I was going to ask how that program has been affected, if you've been able to find people to work in that program at all.
They're always recruiting AmeriCorps Vista people to help RSVP. We've been very fortunate to have Chelsea. Her term is going to end here in August, but she did do 2 years with RSVP here in Dickinson. So, and I'm not sure if any of you know what the AmeriCorps Vista program is. It's basically the American version of Peace Corps. but they do their service over in America. So we've been very fortunate to have Chelsea in our community, and she's been she started our local enterprise here of the local charm store, and so she's been very involved in getting that store up and running for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Your handout, the last sheet, can you help us understand those dollar figures a little bit more? $644,000, that's the total to run the program, I assume. The very last sheet.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I would have to check with our manager, Nancy Olson, but I believe that is to run all of the RSVPs across the state.
Yeah.
And we do have 6
I
now.
take it that's what it is, and the 391 must be the federal dollars that you receive?
Right, that's money that comes from the corporation.
So this 25,000 would be part of the 187? Is that correct, or?
I would believe so, but I will find out for you, for sure.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a sense for, you know, where our community stands in comparison to the state total.
RSVP has offices not only in Dickinson, but Bismarck, Minot, Jamestown, Fargo, and Grand Forks. I think what Commissioner Jackson may be driving at is the other cities, how much do they contribute? Do you know?
No, I don't. I can find that information out for you, though.
It's a curiosity question as much as anything, but
That's okay.
might be interesting to know.
Okay.
You receive funds from United Way also then? Do you?
We have in the past, but right now, no.
You don't, okay. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Next, we'll hear from the Sunrise Youth Bureau.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Commissioners. My name is Jerry Mayer, Director of the Sunrise Youth Bureau, and I have Ms. Holly Prowse here, who is our youth educator, and Ms. Amber Reisenhauer, who is our youth advisor. Basically, the Sunrise Youth Bureau provides a variety of services to youth and their families. We cover 11 counties in southwest North Dakota. We're the only facility that offers these services in this part of North Dakota. The services we provide are diversion, prevention, education, attendant care, and an out-of-school suspension program. Recently, a female was referred to our office for not coming home directly after school, staying out late without her parents' permission, not letting her parents know where she was. She was not following the rules at home, talking to adults on the internet in adult chat rooms. She was taking indecent pictures of herself, posting them on the internet, and having sexually explicit conversations with adult males. She is in the 8th grade. Approximately 100 youth are referred each year to the Youth Bureau by local law enforcement, juvenile court, parents, or the schools for violations of the law or family problems. Violations include such things as alcohol, unruly behavior, disorderly conduct, shoplifting, and etc. A recent study reported that the more deeply a youth gets involved with the juvenile justice system, the more likely they are to get arrested as an adult. Involvement with the juvenile justice system was a single greatest predictor of further criminal acts. By youth working with the Youth Bureau, we can divert them from juvenile court, give them appropriate consequences for their actions, change their behavior, and thereby save the taxpayers money by keeping them out of the juvenile court system. Recently, a principal called and said they are having problems with some bullying issues in a particular 4th grade class. The students were bullying each other's students on body image, weight, and gossiping behind each other's back. Holly presented classes to these students on appreciating differences and on bullying and teasing. Last year, Holly presented 379 classes to 6,862 students from kindergarten to high school. Her subjects included bullying, teasing, peer relationships, drugs, alcohol, self-esteem, and many more. By doing early prevention and education presentations in the schools, she is able to influence their behavior and prevent future problems. A principal called and said they are suspending a student from school for numerous disruptions in the class, not doing his work, breaking the rules in the classroom, and verbally stating in front of the rest of the class that he wanted to kill his teacher. He is in the 6th grade. Amber supervised 32 students who spent their suspension time at the Youth Bureau last year for various violations to include fighting, carrying weapons to school, and unruly behavior. By having them spend their time at the Youth Bureau, they continue to work on their homework, are not allowed to stay at home or run the streets. In addition, most students are allowed to go back to school early if they participate in this program, and benefits them by getting them back into the school setting as soon as possible. Recently, a female was brought to our office as a runaway from Indiana. She was lured over the internet to become a model in Washington, D.C. After arrival in Washington, she soon discovered that it was a ploy to get her involved in a prostitution ring. To get out of the situation, she stole a car and was stopped in Hettinger. She remained at the Youth Bureau until arrangements could be made to transfer her to a different facility. She is 17 years old. About 100 youth stay at the Youth Bureau anywhere from a few hours to several weeks. They are brought in by local law enforcement for being a runaway, drinking, unable to locate their parents, fighting with their parents, and unable to stay at home, or for a variety of other reasons. While at the Youth Bureau, they are provided with 24-hour-a-day care until a decision can be made as whether they can be returned home or placed outside of the home. Having this service available to our local law enforcement is critical so they can take the child to the Youth Bureau, know they are taken care of, and return to their duties in a short amount of time. Recently, a fight occurred at a local high school. All of the participants of the fight were charged with disorderly conduct. A part of the consequence was to have them all complete an anger management class. The fight involved 7 high school girls. In addition to her educational presentations in the school, Holly also does classes at the Youth Bureau in subjects such as self-esteem, respect, anger management, social skills, and etc. Approximately 100 students take these classes each year to help them understand the risks and dangers associated with some of the choices they make. I'm sure that all of the agencies that come before you today will also have serious and heartbreaking tales. Each agency representative will discuss their need for funding because they truly believe in a program and also believe that their program deserves city funding. Each of us agencies believe that our agency is important and critical to Dickinson. And to be honest with you, I truly believe that many of us would prefer not to be here today, and that we would prefer to be able to subsist on our own without city funding. I'm also positive that each agency that's representative today will look at their budget and come up with new funding sources and try to come up with ways to maintain their current operation. You have a difficult task ahead of you as commissioners. We appreciate the support you gave us last year and hope that you can continue with the support again for the upcoming year. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, on your other revenues of $109,000, what is that all from?
About 80-some thousand, I don't know the exact amount, comes from county mill levy dollars and county donations. And the rest is for things like we charge for our classes and just donations from various people. But about most of that, about 80,000 comes from county, either mill levy or donation dollars.
Thank you.
Okay.
You list nearly $31,000 in other expenses. Can you be a little more detailed on what other expenses are?
Okay, under expenditures?
Right.
Those would be things like telephone bill, cell phone bill, normal operating expenses, supplies, equipment, those kinds of expenses. Obviously, our biggest expenditure is salaries, which is where most of our dollars go, but those would be things that, like I said, paper, pencils, supplies, equipment, Xerox contract, those kinds of things.
You're showing nearly $101,000 in your checking account.
Currently, yes.
Is that because of property taxes that come in early in the year?
Right. Most of our dollars we get in January, most of our mill levy dollars come in January, so we don't usually, most of our revenue comes in either January, February, and that has to last us throughout the year. So this will last us for the rest of that year. Correct.
And what is the impact on your agency from the rapid oil development that we're seeing here? Any impact at all?
I would say that, you know, like everybody else, yes, it does impact us. We have seen an increase in clients. We have seen an increase of activity because of the, and we are trying to keep numbers on how many of those people that are affected are from either out of state or some oil revenue source. So we are looking at that also.
Other comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor, I would guess the Sunrise Youth Bureau probably works with those three fellows in the back of the room once in a while.
That's correct.
If it would be appropriate, Mr. President, I wonder if anybody would care to give the police department's perspective
Sure.
on the
Chief
mission.
Rummel's on our board of directors also.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Chuck Rummel. As the police chief, I also serve on the board of directors of the Youth Bureau, Sunrise Youth Bureau. And we are tasked with trying to keep this organization afloat with the monies that we do have. Jerry and I, over the course of this last year, went over the budget, and we try to scrutinize and try to figure out, you know, how to balance next year's budget and that kind of thing. And I can tell you that this staff is very good stewards as well with the monies that they get. They're squeezing the penny. We are, as the police department, probably the largest users of the Sunrise Youth Bureau. Prior to that, we had an officer. Prior to the Youth Bureau, we had a Police Youth Bureau, which tied up a whole officer. But we didn't do the things the Sunrise Youth Bureau did. We weren't able to. Since the existence of the Sunrise Youth Bureau, I can tell you that, you know, a lot of juveniles, a lot of probably potential juvenile delinquents have been stopped from going any further into the court system because of the interaction, the intervention that the staff has done with them. Them getting into the schools and doing the programs kind of frees up the police department. And we no longer need a police youth bureau. But if this did not exist, we would. And I know that they get subsidies from the county, but we are the largest users. There's no question. We're able to call these guys at 2 o'clock in the morning when we find a runaway, or we apprehend a kid that stole a car and can't go to jail or something like that. And they're more than happy to come out and help us. So we really do use them, and we appreciate them. Just want to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chief Rummel.
Almost got away.
Well, now I'm going to ask you a hard question.
Oh, boy.
No, we've had the school resource officer full-time now for a few years. On the prevention programs that Mr. Mayor was talking about earlier, whether we're in the classroom talking about bullying or some other issue, is that a coordinated effort, or how is that coordinated with the school resource officer?
The school resource officer's duties are somewhat different than this. Holly and the staff go to the grade schools mostly, and they teach the different topics, anger management and that kind of thing. The school resource officer maintains most of the duties between the junior high and the high school. And so that time is used up doing some interventions up in those schools. And Dave right now, Dave Wallace, is the school resource officer, and he can tell you that, you know, he really doesn't have a lot of time for teaching as they once did. It's mostly intervention now. And they do work hand in hand. They do, Dave does refer certain cases to Sunrise Youth Bureau. So the duties are different, if I could.
What's going on where tell us what's causing the school resource officer to spend more time on intervention? You know, when we got into this program, I think they were able to spend more time on education.
Yes.
What's happening?
I believe we've come to a point now where many of many of the students and the parents trust where this program has been and is going, and we are able to obtain a lot more information and intervene before certain things happen. But we also have to, Dave also does respond to a lot of things. As Jerry alluded to, there was a fight that occurred. There seems to be more confrontations that Dave gets involved with, and luckily, you know, he does hear about these things and he's able to intervene before some of these things happen. But, you know, Dave is up there talking with the students, with the parents, and trying to resolve some of the topics and the issues that he encounters.
Okay, and in terms of the education side, then the Sunrise Youth Bureau spends more time in the K through 6 arena and not in,
Right.
Okay.
And Dave does the high school and the junior.
High,
Yep.
yeah. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for me? Again, I thank you for supporting us last year and hope that you will continue to support us in the future.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, our next presenter is the Western Wellness Foundation.
I did contact her, and she is on her way, so she should be here within the next minute or two.
You know, just for explanation to the general public, the commission will not be making any decisions today on these budget requests. Really what we're doing is hearing the requests, asking our questions, and then as we go into the budget process, city staff will be taking the initial look at the first run of the budget. They will look at all these initial requests for subsidies and will be making a recommendation to the commission at its first budget meeting. I suspect there may be some commissioners who may give some input to city staff on these various items in the process, but if the public is wondering why we're not acting on anything today, that's the reason. Why don't we take a 5-minute recess while we're waiting for the next presenter? To order, and would Southwest Community Service be willing to present?
Yeah, I've been waiting all week.
Yeah, you have.
Like, oh my God. My name is Toni Marosco, and I've been here now 9 years with Southwest Community Service, and we are down to one employee, which is me. I haven't had a vacation for a long time. do you all know about what the program is about? It provides the judicial system with an alternative to incarceration for low-risk, non-violent offenders, but I have been getting more violent offenders, and usually it's the moms. So, we also do drug testing, and the last couple of years, we've only made about $250 on drug testing, and with all the new people moving into town since January, probably close to 6,000 I've done. It's just, and a lot of people from out of state that are on like parole and probation or have court orders are being transferred down to our office now. So it's been really busy. We're real happy about the amount of money that we're getting for the UAs. What we were asking for, I was very thankful we got the 5,000 because we asked for 6,500 and then was told 2,000, but got a surprise in the mail and we got 5,000. So that was really good. We're asking for 6,500 this year. With just one employee now, you know, it was taking about $70,000 to run the program, but I did up a budget. I don't know if you have it in there. I think I put a budget in, and I was going to try, they all kind of laughed at me, but the projected income that we have coming in is $49,330. And the total expenses are $48,830. So we basically need a new computer, but I'm trying to keep everything just bottom of the line. Just anybody that right now that has been arrested, as terms for their bond release, they have to have drug testing, and we charge $20 a drug test, has to be cash. And so we've made more money on that than what we projected. I did on our budget 3,500, but we've done over 5,000 now on the drug testing, and they're still coming. And we've been in business for 17 years, and I traveled to 9 cities and counties, and they've all been really, really good about, you know, donating to the program. So basically, we're just kind of running on maybe $500 extra. So I would appreciate it, we would all appreciate it, you know, if there was in the budget, you know, for 6,500 this year.
Tony, as you said when you started, the 4 of us know about this program. It's been before us several times, but we have a lot of new people in our community that will probably watch this for the first time on Channel 19.
Okay.
Can you just briefly tell us what the kind of the main mission of your program is?
Yeah, I got this in here. Well, you know, basically we work with Stark County, Dunn, Billings, Golden Valley, Slope, Bowman, Adams, and Hettinger. And what we do is when the offender, whether it's an MIC or domestic violence or, you know, whatever, they will be given, they can't always pay all their fines and fees, so they will get community service. On top of that, sometimes they get all their fines and fees converted to community service. And I make arrangements for them to work at a non-for-profit or government agency to give
To do their work. Yeah. What would be a good example of how someone might perform community service? Can you give us one or two good examples?
Community action and weatherization, we use them a lot, and we'll start using them again, but apparently they got some extra funding, and until that was used up, they could not have any volunteers. So I did get a call the other day, but we've had so many people that have been hired at our work sites, you know, even if it's, you know, part-time at the research center, you know, for the kids, you know, once they do their community service. Community Action and Weatherization have hired several different people that, especially if they've got 800 hours to do, because they don't have to train them then. And we also work with the juvenile workers. And when there was 2 of us working, I used to take them out on work crews and supervise them. So now I have to find places where they will have a supervisor to kind of watch over them. And, you know, we're hoping that they learn some skills. There's so many of these young adults, especially right now, coming in with drug problems and stuff, that do not have jobs. And so we're one of the ideas is, you know, you send them to a work site and they have to treat it like a job. Like if they can't make it in, they have to call the site supervisor, and if they don't, they get fined $20. And so that they can, and you know, and they have to, you know, treat it just like they would a regular job. And basically the goal is to have the offenders be held accountable for, you know, their crimes with the least possible cost to the taxpayer. And I know I do affidavits when someone doesn't comply. The judges will usually send them back to me, just because it, I mean, what is it, about $75, $100 a day to keep them incarcerated? They'll usually add on hours. And the Department of Corrections, we did get some funding back from them, but it's even less than last year, so that was down to $12,000, which we take anything we can get. You know, but basically it just provides the judicial system with an alternative to incarceration. We serve parole and probation, adults, juveniles, people just being released from prison. Anybody that's been arrested with the drug issue, when they get released, they have, on condition of their bond, they have to do drug testing twice a week. Is there any other questions?
Well, I don't. Other commissioners here, do you have some questions or comments?
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes.
Well, we just heard a proposal from Sunrise Youth Bureau, and you were mentioning juveniles also. Sunrise Youth Bureau, I believe, was junior high on down. Do you have clients that have sometimes been through the Sunrise Youth Bureau program?
Yeah, they said, yeah, we don't get paid, yeah, we can't bill juvenile court for them, but they do come to us.
But have you ever had kids that have been through the Sunrise Youth Bureau program and they've had no success, or I should say, they've come through your program also? Mm-hmm. See the same kids between the two?
Yeah, usually the first offense, they go to Sunrise Youth Bureau, depending on what it is. And I've noticed since the 9 years I've been here, the things that kids are getting in trouble for is more than just the MICs now. I mean, we're looking at, you know, simple assaults, you know, a concealed weapon. It's just unbelievable how different it's been from 9 years ago. But yeah, I do. In fact, I think there was a couple months ago, I had about 8 of them come through. And then if they get caught again, then they go to, you know, the juvenile court and formal court.
What's the youngest age of a...
That I've had? 12. Yes.
Do you deal primarily with young adults then? Is that?
The majority of mine are the adults. And right now, my mornings are really taken up with a lot of drug testing. I've never seen this much drug testing. You know, it's good for us because we're making money, but you know, in the 9 years, you know, I don't know, when you go buy Sudafed or something, you've got to, you know, get your license out and do everything, and I don't know really if that's done any good. I've heard that they found other ways to make it, because most of my drug cases are meth cases that are coming in, and I have a lot of them.
And the drug testing is required by the judge, is that?
When they're released from, you know, their bond release, that is one of their conditions of their bond release, is they have to have random drug testing. And, you know, I drug tested an older lady a couple months ago, and it was positive for meth, so she accused me of having it in my pocket and stick it in her, you know, and I worried about her, but she ended up getting picked up with a bunch of meth. But, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of people, I've had a lot of people move in from Colorado that have had court orders transferred down, and in Idaho. And I know Idaho is a big place where they make meth. That's a problem area. And I've had some people from Texas that have come down, lots of them from Colorado. They're all coming here for work. And the majority of them, it seems like, they're also coming down with their court orders to be transferred down to us, and drug testing. And then if I have anybody that doesn't live in Dickinson, but like lives in Bowman or whatever, I'll call the sheriff down there, and we make arrangements that they do the drug testing there, and then they send me the results of it. The juveniles, I don't know, it just seems, it used to be that it was just always MICs, and now there's just a lot of domestic assaults, simple assaults, criminal mischief, burglary. That's one thing I've noticed a difference with the juveniles.
Any, Mr. Kessel?
Tony, I'm wondering, you've listed 22,600 as city and county support.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind sharing what other cities and counties support your program?
Yeah, I actually have it here. I thought I stuck that in there. $1,000 from Adams County. That's, you want to know what we get from them?
Please.
Yeah, from Adams County, $1,000, and I really don't get a lot of people from Adams County, and so Billings County, I get $2,500, and Bowman County usually gives us $1,500, and I requested $1,700. I've had a lot of Bowman people that I've been working with. In the past years, I know the city of Dickinson has, you know, we've gotten 8,000, and mainly it was 65. So last year I was kind of surprised, but I was real happy when I got that $5,000 check. Slope County, I maybe get 2 from Slope, and they give me $1,500. Golden Valley, they normally give me $2,000. I'm asking for $25,000. Stark County, they always give us $65,000. This year I'm asking for $75,000. And Beach City, it was $850 last year. I'm asking for $1,000 this year. Dunn County normally always gives us $2,000. And then Hettinger County, last year we got $800, and I'm asking for $900 this year. And they usually do give it to us, just, you know, a little bit. But some of them I'm really surprised, like Slope County and Adams County, because we don't get a lot of people from there. And if they get, like Dunn County, if they get in trouble in Dunn County, they have to work in Dunn County, and that's what I try to do that with them. Whatever county they're in trouble with, that's where they have to do their community service. And I did have a couple nice young men last summer, high school boys that worked at Able. There's one of the Ables, it has teenage kids. And, you know, they would help them, get them ready, and they'd go bowling and doing stuff. And 2 of them got hired there for the summer. And I know the probation officer, you know, asked me if it was possible they could work there just to, you know, to see how fortunate they are, you know, and both of the boys ended up working there for the summer. So, and, you know, I don't know what else, you know, I can say. It's, you know, our goal is to have the offenders just be held accountable for their crimes with the least possible cost to the taxpayer.
Well, let's see if there's any other questions for you here. Okay, I think you've done a good job covering the program and explaining the resources available to you and your expenses.
Yep. And one more thing too is that I do work with, you know, if I have trouble with any of the adults, you know, there's several lawyers in town that I can call before I send them back and say, listen, can you have, this is what's going on, have a talk with them, call them, so I don't have to send them back. And they usually come back in and apologize to me, you know, and we just, you know, we go from there and everything's fine. So it's really nice that I can work with the, you know, most of the lawyers here in town, the attorneys that these people have. Before I send them back to court, I like to give them at least one more chance.
I think that's admirable. It's good. All right.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. One more thing, I'm glad my kids are all adults. I do have a 15-year-old grandson, though, and her mom has a GPS on everything. The same daughter that I was chasing like a hound dog everywhere. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Well, next we'll hear from Western Wellness Foundation, which is the Best Friends, and Chris Fair is here from that organization.
Good afternoon, Mayor Johnson, City Commissioners. I'm Chris Fair, Director of the Best Friends Program. With me today is our Vice President of our board, Dan Connor. So if you have questions for him, he's here to answer those. I just want to thank you again for taking the time to hear about your Best Friends Program and then to consider a request for funding for 2012. And I also want to thank you for the current year's allocation of $2,500. It made a big difference to our program. So looking at into 2012, it's a little early for us to do budgeting, but right now I'm sort of projecting a tentative deficit of about $60,000. And your current contribution means that 6 kids in Dickinson were able to receive mentoring services from a trained volunteer mentor who provides social skills training, companionship, role modeling, homework help, tutoring, and friendship to these children from our community. And keep in mind that Best Friends is a prevention program, so no one in our program is, when they enroll, they're not in trouble. The idea is to keep them from getting in trouble later, even now or later on. We do serve kids who may be at risk, and that's probably one of the factors for enrolling a child in Best Friends. A variety of factors in their lives put them at risk. Here are some examples from the current year. 68% of the kids in our program were at the poverty level. They qualified for free and reduced lunches at school. That's more than double the rate of all children in Stark County. 48% were below proficiency in math when they were enrolled in our program. 45% were below proficiency in reading when they enrolled in the program. 42% of the kids in our program lived in single-parent homes, which is double the average of all children in North Dakota and almost triple the average of all children in Stark County. And 13% of the children in our program were from an ethnic minority, which is triple the minority rate of children in Stark County. So these factors indicate possibly youth at risk of perhaps becoming a victim or a perpetrator of violence, of educational challenges such as not graduating from high school or delinquency. And national and our local studies show us that when youth are supported by a mentor, the risk factors are lessened. And when youth don't graduate from high school, they earn less money and they're 8 times more likely to go to prison. That's a huge cost to society. Mentoring helps to prevent these youth from becoming statistics. So last year, the kids in our program, 89% of them the kids in our program improved their academic competency, and more than 90% improved their attitudes, behaviors, and social skills. So those are short-term results, but they're pretty impressive for what can happen in a year. Graduation's coming up this weekend, and some kids have already graduated. So I want to just tell you a little bit about what I see on those, the names of the kids on the rolls. They're on target to graduate. Those are kids in our program. Back when they were in elementary school, they were perhaps projected to be at risk of not graduating. Very different path, the path that led to dropping out, some destructive or negative behavior. So their success today can be attributed in part to the influence a caring mentor had on those young lives probably 5 to 8 years ago. So the last year, Best Friends has seen some large increases in requests for mentors. We've served over 219 children so far in 2011. We're projecting it's going to be 250 or more by the end of 2011. We're observing that a large percentage of this increase is coming from families who are new to our area, who are searching for work, or maybe they're working several jobs. Some of those people are homeless. That means their kids are homeless. Many families have some social skills challenges. The stress of moving and the economic concern in their family is showing in their children. Because of the national recession, funding for social programs has been rearranged. In some cases, it's been cut and discontinued. Much of the funding for mentoring programs has been reallocated from the Education Department to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, where large grants are being awarded to national organizations, and Justice is expecting that that funding will trickle down to the lower grassroots level in some manner. And we are expected to form partnerships and be creative and work with our governments and work with other organizations in our communities and in our state to figure out how to provide mentoring services. So at the same time we're seeing that increase in demand for services, we're seeing the loss in funding. So this is what we've done in the last year since I came to talk to you. We've continued to seek some grants. As you know, I came and talked to you about the Title V funding. We're expanding our recycling program thanks to the city and some permission to have some help there. We've added a new special event, the Chocolate Affair, which we just had earlier in May, and that was very successful. And we're strengthening our program by developing partnerships. So we currently have partnerships, obviously, with the City of Dickinson, North Dakota State University, RSVP Plus, Dickinson State University, and both the public and Catholic school systems, among others in our community. So we're requesting that the city invest in children in our community of $5,000 to ensure that mentoring services continue and we can prevent some of this economic and educational challenges that kids are facing. $5,000 means that 6 kids can be matched with a mentor for current and future success. That's double what you did last year. It's doable. It's an impact that you can be proud of, but also think of the future of those 6 kids graduating from high school instead of not graduating or not getting a good job or sitting in prison where we're all paying for that. I would be happy to answer any questions you have, and I want to thank you for your time and for thinking of us. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? On your financial statement, you have in investments nearly $89,000, and then in parentheses you have dedicated behind that. Can you explain that to us?
Yep. Those are funds that are dedicated solely for specific purposes for Best Friends, so we can't just write checks for payroll. So it's money that's been donated, like the endowment, qualified endowment, so we could use some of that interest We cannot just spend it. So it looks like you have, like we have a lot of money, and that's why I always say it's those are dedicated funds.
You can only use the earnings off of those funds.
Yeah, and those are pretty specific for what can be done and how much of the percent we can use, so.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
President Johnson,
Gusson.
as you know, a lot of the times, these requests are funded through our general fund budget. Some of them are funded through other revenue streams, sales tax, things such as that. An item that Ms. Fair brought to my attention this year is a program that might assist us in offsetting some of the general fund impacts to these types of programs. It's called the Roundup. She attended a training, and I guess in Madison, South Dakota, is it?
The program's in Mitchell, South
Mitchell,
Dakota,
South
yeah.
Dakota. Maybe you can explain the
Sure.
program better than I.
Sure.
There is a local program as well that, that is replicated here for a different purpose, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was at the National School Board Convention in April, and I attended a session, a training session that was put on by the city of Mitchell, South Dakota, and they have the Roundup program, and Mr. Kessel has their brochure. They use that, they take their utility bills and they round it up to the nearest dollar, and the difference is used as city grant funds. In Mitchell, South Dakota, they use that for the Dollars for Scholars program, and every graduating high school senior receives a scholarship. And I was talking to Mr. Kessel, and I thought that might be possibly whatever the city would like to do, a creative way of letting all citizens in Dickinson participate in donating to a charity. I mean, how much would it cost you at most? I don't know, what does it say on there? The most is like 99 cents? I mean, you know, that's how much it would cost you on your utility bill. They have the option to opt in or out. I don't know what kind of a bookkeeping issue it is, but what a neat way for everybody to participate. If you were going to look at subsidy dollars, I think you could take in more money and perhaps fund more and do more good. Thought it was a neat idea. I'm sure you can get a hold of the city of Mitchell and just find out other information. Rough Rider Electric here also has the Roundup program. They round up all their utility bills, and then they have a grant program that their grant board meets twice a year and disperses grants under their guidelines. So I thought maybe it would be something the city might be worth considering. And I want you to know that I'm part of the solution. Always thinking here, not just coming and asking for money, but I want to be part of the solution. I want to help.
Okay, anything else here? Thank you.
No, great. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, I do
another
have another question, and you, I think you kind of alluded to it in your presentation, but can you expand on the impact that you're seeing from the energy development here in the community?
Sure.
Then
I can talk from two areas. First, our local people. The people in our program in the past have generally been underemployed, or I would say just underemployed, employed at jobs with low wages. What we're seeing in our program from those families is they've never had this much money in their lives, probably, or this much work. And so the impact for us is current families are working more, but we are not seeing that that's translating to support for their kids. So there's still not the time for homework help, perhaps not the importance placed on education and those types of things. Kids staying home alone a lot without supervision. We see that. So that would be from people who are living here now, and they're benefiting from our economic activity, and they're having jobs, and things are going well economically for them. We don't see some of that translating into their family situation or their social issues. The other part of that is people moving into our community who are new. This past year, we served 4 kids who were English is their second language, and we happened to have a couple of bilingual volunteers. And I'm talking kindergarten all the way through the high school, 4 kids who had limited English proficiency. That's very new for our program. We just happen to have bilingual mentors who were able to help out. So that was one impact. Another impact is just people with maybe a different family style, a different discipline style than what we have or what we have come to expect. Families where violence is a daily occurrence, and it's not thought that that would not be desirable. You know, so different values, different social situations, and families who are working a lot, their kids still need to be taken care of. Families coming here from other states, you know, they're stressed. They maybe lost their house. Maybe they're living in a camper. They're trying to get back on their feet, and it could be at the expense of those kids, where the family, they're getting ahead economically, but the kids are getting left behind. So we're seeing things that we haven't seen probably for years, or things we've never seen before, with the discipline issues, the increase in using corporal punishment as an acceptable form of discipline, which is something that hasn't been, I've been in our program since 2000, and I haven't seen that probably for 8 or 9 years in our program, and it's pretty common is what I'm seeing. Also parents who can't help their kids with their homework, parents maybe with maybe not even able to help, or not interested in school, not valuing their education, so the kids don't have the support to get their homework done or to even go to school. So those are really interesting issues that we're seeing impacting us here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Anything else?
Great.
All right.
Good. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Okay, I see the representative from the Theodore Roosevelt Symposium. We would certainly invite you to the podium.
Thank you very much. President Johnson, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Sharon Kilzer. I'm Project Manager for the Theodore Roosevelt Center at Dickinson State University. And I'm presenting our request for continued support of the Theodore Roosevelt Symposium. We're requesting the same level of support as in past years at $20,000. And I wanted to just comment briefly today on the value of this event and this program for our community, and the value of the support that you provide to it. The Theodore Roosevelt Symposium has really become a cultural and humanities program that is a feature event for our community. And I want to share a couple of comments from past participants, both of these from last year, first-time attendees. And the first said, this was my first opportunity to attend the symposium. I plan to circle next year's dates when I get home. Just very positive response. And the other is similar. This was my first symposium, but it will be the first of many. I'll be here next year. You know, there's no, I'll think about being next year, or coming next year. They plan to come again next year. So I wanted to just reflect with you for a moment on what the reason for that might be. What is it that draws people to come to this event, to our community, and to come back again? Some of them 5 years in a row. We've had a 6-year history with the symposium counting this year. So, you know, some of the attendees who come have a fascination with Theodore Roosevelt. Some who come from outside our community have somewhat of a curiosity about his time in the West, and why is something going on in North Dakota related to Theodore Roosevelt? Those of us living here kind of get Roosevelted out sometimes, I think. Everything's named Theodore Roosevelt. But those coming from outside the community, again, some, including one of my staff members at least, didn't know that Roosevelt had spent time in North Dakota. So that can be some of what draws people here. Just kind of a curiosity, what is this all about? What's going on out there? But that doesn't get them here twice, or 3 times, or 5 times. So when we think about those repeat visitors, those return visitors, what draws them, I would argue, is the quality of the program that we provide here. I'm very proud of Dickinson State University as a 2-time alumnus. And I'm very proud of this community and what it provides and affords to residents and to visitors to our community. And this program in particular draws really highly acclaimed scholars and authors, most of whom have never been to Western North Dakota. wouldn't otherwise have reason to come out here. And they become fascinated by this place and by the work that we're doing around Theodore Roosevelt. And they share that with colleagues when they get back. So it's making a difference in raising the profile of our community. As you may know, I hope you know, the National Theodore Roosevelt Association is coming to our symposium this fall, and that will bring, because of the unique opportunity of hosting their annual meeting in conjunction with our symposium, we expect more out-of-town guests this year. I checked today, we have more than 40 hotel rooms reserved already, and we're 5 months out, so I'm very excited about that. We hope to fill up 120 hotel rooms. So, you know, again, it's drawing people from outside the community who are learning about us and who we are and what we do. And it's bringing, obviously, economic impact through that draw of people from outside the community. But we're drawing return visitors of our own as well. And so I would state then that the reputation for excellence, the hospitality we provide as a community and as an institution is just excellent. And so it could not be better, and people recognize that, and they come back to experience it again. And that's what we're able to do with the city's help and sponsorship. We're proud to partner with the City of Dickinson in providing this event, and we hope for your continued support. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms.
might have?
Kilzer. Any questions or comments here? Is it true that Edmund Morris is going to be a presenter this fall?
It is.
Yeah.
Mr. Morris is coming for the Theodore Roosevelt Association annual banquet. That event is being held on Saturday evening, October 29th. He has recently released his third book on Roosevelt. It's called Colonel Roosevelt and focuses on the years after his presidency. And so he will be the keynote speaker at that banquet on Saturday evening. Because it is a Theodore Roosevelt Association event, that is a paid event. It's not part of the free offerings or the portions that are sponsored by others. And so we do encourage and invite people to attend, but to be aware that there is a registration fee for that event.
Anything else?
Ms. Kilzer, the way I see this, you know, we're using tax money. We have used tax money to participate in the symposium.
Mm-hmm.
I would see two reasons to do that. The first simply being the cultural benefits that it brings to the community, but secondly, the visitor aspect. Would you agree that that's a really significant part of this? You've talked about it a little bit, but...
Yes. We're really delighted to expand that audience this year by hosting the Theodore Roosevelt Association. Obviously, this is a unique opportunity this year. We don't expect to have that draw in every year. But the work of the Theodore Roosevelt Center continues to gain ground and reputation on a national level. And it is our hope that we continue to grow the symposium audience outside our region and continue to garner out-of-town visitors that bring, again, those economic benefits back to the community.
I know that we've used hospitality tax dollars in the past, and that seems fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Seems fitting with what the symposium has done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, well, thank you for being here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Next is Stark Development and Mr. Baker.
Thank you, members of the commission. It is rare indeed to be running so far ahead of schedule. I'm shocked. I do have a handout for you.
Keep us ahead of schedule, too.
I will try, although I do have a few things to say. I'm sorry. Probably more than the previous speaker. I'm sure that you have in front of you the information requested by Mr. Kessel. I'd like to also hand out this document, which is effectively our accounts receivable. And, you know, it was just my interpretation. I didn't really see a place for that on the form, but certainly we need to be aware of this as well. And these extend out, as you can see, to 2033. 33 sounds like a year that's far, far away. But, anybody else that would like one? Okay. Now, these are basically, the accounts receivable are, of course, repayment of the PACE community share that we will distribute or have distributed in the past. You know, accounts receivable, of course, are always, you hope and pray that you get them all. You know, we're here about budgeting, and the budgeting is really often how we really implement our strategic decisions, and I think that's what this is a lot about in terms of economic development. In 2009, we invested in a study of industrial siting in and near Stark County. The strategic thinking behind that investment was we needed to be to concentrate our industrial uses to the extent possible, to assure that non-industrial growth has an opportunity to occur with continuity, and to guide future strategic investment decisions for all of us. At that time, we put all of the possibilities on the table, basically, as far as, you know, how do we do industrial development in the future. You know, you work with private developers or develop an industrial park ourselves as Stark Development Corporation, or work with local government to develop industrial space. Well, what happened then was oil took off, as you know, and very rapid evolution of land development, along with Stark Development's longstanding principle of using limited taxpayer-based funding to leverage much more significant private funding, leads us to a lot greater clarification of what we should do. We don't need to go out and build an industrial park. We don't need to go out and have the city try and build an industrial park. Our best bet is invest in infrastructure that'll help the private sector to develop industrial parks. And we see that happening. That leverages other private sector investment to a much greater degree, and perhaps some public dollars in there as well, but it will create significant new industrial space, and that's what we need. Our other strategic initiative, you know, initiatives that we've studied for a long time is support our regional manufacturing industry. Right now, as you well know, we're drinking out of the fire hose in terms of energy-related companies adding jobs and investment and pushing up wages. That makes retention of our existing manufacturers and manufacturing jobs ever more difficult. However, if we're going to have a prosperous economy 25 years from now, we need to pay attention to maintaining our manufacturing base and encouraging companies that are in the production side of the oil energy business to operate out of our service area. All these things require workforce. And our biggest workforce development issue now is adequate housing. Stark Development Corporation recognized this in early 2010 and was the first in the state to utilize the Bank of North Dakota's Flex PACE program to incentivize the development of multifamily housing. That program has been used to extensively increase supply of housing units. And while demand has increased even faster than it was physically possible to build units, I think it's safe to say that rents in Dickinson would be much higher today if we had not implemented that program. Simple supply and demand. You know, we have stimulated new housing development. To date, Stark Development has approved 287 units under this program. As you know, it's shorter-term economic activity that's making Dickinson a very busy town today. It's economic development, though, that longer-term investment that'll provide more diverse housing opportunities, long-term energy production jobs, strong manufacturing base, a firm presence for our key institutions, and infrastructure that will support long-term public services. That's the development side. And economic development is the business that Stark Development Corporation is in. We do request continued support at the rate of 14% of the original 1% Dickinson City sales tax to continue down this path. We'll continue to seek to be creative in meeting the needs of the area. We did save up some money to assure we could meet demand in times when opportunity was found. Now is that time. And we expect that those reserves will be used, rightfully so, at this time when we can help private sector investors feel comfortable in investing here. And that's what I have for you. I would answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Are there questions or comments? I do have a comment. I think back to the early 90s when the 1% sales tax was passed and 20% of that was dedicated to senior citizens and economic development, most of it going to economic development. And at that time, the economic development effort would have been, trying to attract businesses here because we had more people than we had jobs. We had several people who were employed but were underemployed. But then as time marched on, and I'd say as we were closing out the 20th century and entering the 21st century, we began to notice that we now had more jobs than people, and economic development kind of started to change from trying to attract other businesses here to attract people here.
Right.
And then in this last 10 years, it's changed even more with the oil development. We certainly still need to attract people, but as you mentioned, now housing is a significant issue. And also in terms of housing and having space available for the oil service companies and other oil-related companies, it puts quite a tax on infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so really economic development now has come to help provide housing and help to provide that infrastructure, whether it's a lift station or a 14-inch water pipe or whatever that might be. And so
Direct response to the increase in activity.
exactly. But I want to applaud Stark County Development for recognizing the change in their role, that economic development for us at this point is not necessarily out trying to attract more businesses. It's attract people, it's helping with housing development, it's helping with infrastructure that perhaps can't be just assigned to a particular group of users. It's more general in nature. All these things are really economic development, and I think there's going to be in the future even more need for that kind of role, and I'd certainly encourage you and your board to continue to be very creative there and futuristic in your thinking. So.
Try to be what your community needs you to be.
Exactly. The role of it, what we would have called economic development what we call economic development today, 30 years ago or 20 years ago, we wouldn't have said that was economic development.
Yeah.
We had an excess, of housing in the 80s and even well into the 90s.
Well, I think I think I can say that I hope that our board and our organization, our activities helped get us there so that we had limited housing available, and I hope that we can continue. These days, we are more an information broker than a smokestack chaser, that's for sure. And we, just today, we've had I think, 2 oil field type service companies come in and ask for information, one of which I'm meeting with tomorrow morning. We've had, I think, 3 different sets of people in the building talking about housing. And, you know, and some of them are people looking to develop housing here. Some of them are people looking for housing here. But, you know, it's a very busy time in Dickinson, and, you know, the economic activity level is very high. I just think, you know, that we all need to be conscious that we got to look long-term and look at the long-term development side of it as well. And I hope that you're happy with what we're doing along those lines, and hope we can continue to meet the needs of the community.
Other comments, questions?
If I may, President.
Mr. Kessel.
I just wanted to say, I'm an ex officio member of the Stark Development Board, and I did express these sentiments to the board itself, but I'd like to do that in a public setting like this, and that's just to say thank you to the board for allowing Galen to be on the interview committee for our city planner, and he was also participated in the interviews for our consultant selection for our comprehensive and transportation plan. We believe we have selected that firm, and we'll be making a recommendation to the City Commission at our next meeting. But having Stark Development as a strategic partner and being involved in those kind of processes is important because of the perspective that they bring to the table. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I don't see elder care yet in the room. Mayor's Committee on Persons with Disabilities, I believe they asked to not present this time. Is that still correct? But I do see the representative of the Small Business Development Center, and if you're ready, we'd certainly invite you to the podium and hear your presentation.
Something I could ride on. Good afternoon. My name is Rayanne Keel, and I'm the Regional Director of the Small Business Development Center here in Dickinson. Galen was a great segue to my presentation in that we're kind of the softer, quieter side of economic development, so to speak. Our program serves us, the 8 counties of southwestern North Dakota. We are here funded through federal, state dollars with a local match to complement. We serve clients, small businesses, retail businesses, primary sector clients, whoever needs help, whether it's startup, retention, creation of jobs, creation of new businesses. By mandate, we're not able to charge for our services. It's a free service, so that's a little bit of a stretch for us. But basically, we're out there to support that Main Street small business, creating and retaining jobs in the community. I want to tell you a little bit about a client experience because I think that tells you best about our program. I've never come here before to talk to you. The average client's going to walk into my office and he's either been scratching on a napkin an idea for a business, or he's been to the bank and the bank said, take your napkin up and see Rayanne and help put this into something that makes sense. So we sit down with them and we go through the whole process of business registration, name selection, all the licensing that may be required, help them hook them up to, the accounts, the attorneys, the insurance quotes, whatever they're going to need, and then we help them with their business plan or their pro formas so that they understand where they're making their money, where they're spending their money, basically increasing their success factor so that when they go back to the bank, they're more prepared to talk smart about what's really going on in their business. How many widgets did they sell to make payroll? They know that by the time they go back. The other thing that we do is that financing small businesses is no different than it is large business. It's a combination of a lot of resources that make it happen. And with our economy growing, people aren't necessarily prepared. So what we do that's unique is that we're able to take that entire package, go back to the bank, suggest forward, possibly some microloans, gap financing, different interest rate programs that might help put that package together and make it an overall funded program. Again, another thing about increasing success. So they've been to the bank, they got the business started, they're going, and then we're there to catch them and help them if they have questions on accounting, marketing, human resources, what do I do with my website, where do I find a policy manual, whatever. Whether we can help them or we refer them out,
isn't even the issue. It's just that we're there to continue to catch them as they grow, hopefully as they grow. In some cases, we have failures, or we have sales from one generation to another. In that case, we try to bridge that experience by either minimizing the damage on a failure of a business, or perhaps helping figure out how to capitalize that transition from one generation to another. So we're just kind of everything you need in a little package, quietly working up at the Strom Center. We've got an increased demand on our services in this area. I don't have to tell you how this community has grown. You know it. You're sitting here with request after request today for increased supports around the community. I started in this position in 2009. Little did I know, walking in, that that was already a record-setting year. We were about 30% ahead of the prior year, but I just figured it was me not getting my arms around my job. You know, it's just busy and I haven't figured out what to do. Well, as we close out the year, we saw 186 clients. We created 111 jobs, retained 70. It's all right here, you can read. But it had 12 business starts. In 2010, those numbers exploded to 262 clients that we served. Keep in mind, that's not a new client necessarily walking in the door. It could be that client from last year coming back for new needs. But that being said, during 2010, created 70 jobs, retained 49, and had 32 business starts. This year to date, in the first quarter, we've already seen more clients than we saw in 2009. And we, as that unknown shadow behind me that I keep saying we because it's a habit, but that's basically me and a few people out in the outlying communities who, those communities have invested in additional staff to meet their need. So we've created 31 jobs, 7 retained, we've got 6 business starts, we are backlogged on our paperwork, we know these are light numbers at this point. I've given you a lot of information in your packets if you want to see a little bit more about the types of business, sometimes the capital infusion that's coming along with it, but I don't want to bore you with that now because you can all read, and this is really the key piece of this in my mind. Right now, we're sitting on a backlog of clients, probably 4 to 6 months. I'm sitting on probably $6 million worth of loans for clients that are trying to get to the bank, waiting almost patiently for a follow-up appointment or for services. We are not able to take clients probably until the beginning of fall. We're estimating September, possibly October for new clients. That will put a stress on this community's ability to react to the economic growth as it drags down the system. Our request before you now is a new request. We've never come here. We are looking at a day at a time through my center. We're looking at 2012 and saying, how can we add staff to continue to meet this explosive growth in this community? I think I kept that rather short, which is rather surprising. I know you're all shocked and smiling because you were hoping it wasn't going to be horrible. Do you have questions for me?
We knew it wasn't going to be horrible. Can you tell us how many other small business development centers there are in North Dakota?
Well, there are 8 regions, and each region has a different combination. For example, Fargo has the Fargo office and an office in Wahpeton. They also host the North Dakota Trade Office, which gives us a real nice hookup to them.
Yeah.
Up in Grand Forks, there's the Grand Forks office, an office in Grafton, Devil's Lake, and then they have a defense contract on the base, kind of one of those long stories. Minot has Minot and Bottineau. Williston has Williston, Tioga, Crosby, Watford. I have Dickinson. We have outreach offices now in Bowman and in Beach. Bismarck has Bismarck, Marketplace, Underwood. Jamestown has Jamestown. Everybody's kind of growing depending on what their opportunities are in their area. But that's basically, we have them on the tribal reservations. We have an office up in Belcourt and one down in Fort Yates.
So in your case, you have satellite offices in Beach and Bowman, and there are staff in those offices, and they've been funded by those respective communities?
Exactly. In fourth quarter of 2010, we had some turnback money available, and both of those communities had wanted to position themselves to add staff because they were seeing the value of this program as it relates with community economic and business development. So they came to me and approached with enough match to be able to hire their person, and I was able to bring enough to just kind of bridge it to the full-time level and bring them a program, bring them resources. And yes, you're right, those communities invested heavily in those positions. But they are targeted to serve those communities exclusively, of course.
And your funding from the state and federal level is pretty well maxed out. You can't really expect much
Our
there.
federal funding is maxed. It's based on population. State funding comes out of the Department of Commerce, and we're not a line item in the Commerce budget. We are, they explained it to me one day, but honestly, it's very confusing. I just know we're tucked somewhere in the Commerce budget under like other, or help, or exasperated programs needed funding. I'm not really sure how they titled it, but they did cut loose a couple $100,000 last year, and then that's divided equally amongst the 8 regions. Now, I will tell you, in 2011, that more state and federal dollars were allocated out to this region because of the economic growth out here and the demand for our services, but we've exhausted everything we can bring out here from those levels. And my portion of the federal contract for 2012 will be $68,000 for the region. And that's the most I can bring. Statewide, we're looking at about 20, maybe another 15 tucked away, from another program, but basically that's all that we can count on for this region.
Do you receive any funding from Dickinson State as long as you're at the Strom Center?
Dickinson State provides the indirects for our program, and that's very important for us on our federal match. Not so much on the state, but on the federal. And the indirects at Dickinson State are right around 32%, so that are 28. It's a negotiated rate between UND, who gets the contract, and Dickinson State, who has the contract with them. And so they give us the space, the copier, the phone, the lawn mowing, the flower pulling, all of the overhead costs for hosting it.
But, so they provide you the space and the related costs there, but above and beyond that, they don't contribute any other cash, do they?
Cash that I get through DSU or the Strom Center, I have received a little bit of funding, I think last year, about $1,500 for interns through the business department. The Strom Center has provided $2,000, $3,000 for interns to help with providing services. And then the Strom Center has received a tech grant through, I think this was through the state, that is going to fund for us to provide outreach services for education in the outlying communities. But I don't receive direct program money. It's usually tied and targeted to a certain delivery of a certain type of a service that they need out of my program. Any other questions?
I have a couple questions for you, Ann. According to your display there, I'm assuming that 2011 is the consolidation of all 3 offices you mentioned, and that 09 and 010 would just be the office out of Dickinson?
It would be all areas. It's all 8 counties.
Okay.
At all times, yeah.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, in 2010, that's a good question, because that's 2 more offices, but they were 4th quarter starts. So their impact is, we met this week, and I think Bowman's sitting on about, in this year-to-date 188, Bowman's sitting on about 15 to 20 active clients as Beach. Those are clients that would have been tucked into those 2009 numbers, because I would have been in Bowman and Beach. Now, they probably doubled their count because of their resources. I know they do. They have 2 new businesses. I think they've had 4 or 5 new business starts in Bowman County this year. They're seeing a lot more clients than I would have been able to handle. So it is hard to get the relativity of it.
So then do the jobs created, or do they fall within the business starts? Or is there a different way that you're generating jobs beyond the businesses that start with your organization?
We have a very complicated validation system that we have to use because of the SBA funding. So for me to say that I created a job, I would have to have a letter or a note or an email from you that said, I created 4 jobs with this business start that you helped me with. That's one way that we do the created and retained. That's one set of metrics for us as impacts. The other one is business starts, when we've helped them and they've got financing, they've registered at the state, and they've actually started business, might be an aside from the jobs created and retained. And you'll see they're all over the wall. It depends, if you start a business that's got 70 jobs, your numbers are really good. The next year you might work with twice as many people, have 3 times the starts, but less jobs created.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, or did I kind of skirt?
No, that...
Okay. Any other questions?
A couple. Rand, looks like most of the additional dollars you're requesting is going to be for people, for staff, for salaries, correct?
What my budget consists of that's before you is exclusively funding a full-time counselor for the Dickinson Regional Office to serve Dickinson and Stark County, some administrative support, some intern time, and then the costs involved with their travel, education, phone, you know, the things that we've got to hire and develop.
Which is reflective of the workload.
Which is reflective of the workload.
Yeah, okay. Now, you've also got a request into Stark Development, I think, that is unanswered. Is this in addition to that? Is this a replacement for that?
The request that I went to Stark Development was for fiscal year 2011, trying to get some funds to be able to meet the need already. Stark Development's budget is, you know, is exhausted, and they gave us what they could this year, but that's what's happening this year. I'm looking at 2012 for you because I wasn't able to, Stark Development doesn't have the budget to give me what I need to do at this point for my program, so I didn't want to premise that I could go back in 12 and have them support me then, if they couldn't support me now. So we're still figuring out what we're going to do with 11, honestly, Gene, but in 12, you know, we're hoping to go out and sow some seeds for some new support so that we can add that staff.
Okay, so there's no duplication here.
No, there's no duplication. One is 11, one is 12. Same basic budget, just 6 months versus, or 5 or whatever versus 12. Any other questions?
Rand, I have one more follow-up based on Commissioner Jackson's question. Assuming that you do get some assistance and you are able to add staff, is the Strom Center and DSU willing to house that staff with those in-kind donations? Do they have a place to stay if you get them?
I already took over space anticipating I was adding staff, so I've already got interns over there working. We're over there taking over that space already. Yeah, they've given me a big room.
We may need some of that space for city staff that we may be adding, so.
For city staff?
Yeah.
Well, you know, talk to Steve.
One more question, if I could. Rand, I know at Stark Development, you talked about the need, probably the need for your office to maybe be a little more surgical with some of your clients. In other words, maybe there's some that you need to shed a little bit quicker. Maybe there's some that really shouldn't get very far in the process. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
You kind of get a flavor for where your successful clients are when they walk in the door, quite honestly, Gene. And it's like any time when we have perceptions that are predisposed on our past and our history, sometimes you find that you're wrong. You know, the old Jed Clampett's a millionaire, who'd have thought kind of thing. Sometimes people don't present themselves as being aligned for success until you work with them a while. Unfortunately, the Small Business Administration says that I need to take every client, listen to them, do an intake on them, and then provide services as appropriate. So there is a certain weed out factor. What happens is either after that, sometimes what happens after that first meeting is they leave and they realize that they're really not prepared for small business, or they're not capitalized for it, or it's going to be more work than they realized, or that there aren't grants out there just waiting to help them get this going. So some of your weed out happens after the first intake meeting when they realize as much as, more them than you, that this isn't going to work for them. Then you get a couple meetings in and you find the people that have timelines versus those who are just sort of dreaming and moving forward. But they do weed out in time, and the client tends to not follow back if they're not really going to be moving forward. And my job is to help identify some of those key indicators early on. I say often when I'm counseling my clients and we do the first pass of the pro formas, I want you to understand how hard it's going to be for you to make your money. In some cases, it's going to be real easy. In some cases, you're going to work really, really hard for that, and you need to go back to your own life and say, does that fit my goals? Does it fit my financial needs? Do I have to work really, really hard to make this work? And sometimes that's where the client says, you know what, I've always wanted to have an XYZ something or other, but I have bills to pay, and I'm going to have to work 24/7, and my family's going to go without shoes. And But that's part of what we do, is that we help them with that decision. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you for your time. It is exciting to see you early. I didn't take the Mayor's Committee time, and I promised 15 minutes, but those were your questions. And the Mayor's Committee thanks you, even though we don't need your money this year, which is why we're not here. We're still out doing good work, fantastic work. We're just very frugal, didn't need your money. Know you have a lot of stress on your budget and wanted to just say thanks, but no thanks this year.
Okay.
Was that okay, Dennis?
You did great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take my small property.
Well, the chair needs a 5-minute break, so I'm going to call a 5-minute break. Okay, we'll come back to order. And the next presentation will be from Elder Care. And representing Elder Care is Colleen Rodakowski, so welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to request funding for 2012 for public transit in Dickinson. My name is Colleen Rodakowski. I'm the Executive Director, and also with me here today is our President of the Elder Care Management Board, Fred Gangler. And our request is $100,000. Last year we requested $75,000, which was an increase of $25,000, and we received $52,500. So we received an additional $2,500 last year from our original amount of $50,000. This year I'm asking for $100,000, and I did hand out 2 additional handouts for you. One is a proposed budget for 2012, and in this budget, if you turn the page, the total revenue, anticipated revenue is a little over $1 million. And then if you turn the page towards the end, we're looking at a net income of about $22,000, and that's plugging in $100,000. I plugged into this budget my $100,000 request for you. And I thought that because I am asking for such a large increase, I thought this would help you see our financial picture. And that's why I put that together. I had the Elder Care Management Board approve this at its last meeting. We did it in advance this year because I think it's going to help you see a little bit more of how our financials are. The second sheet that I handed out is a fare, a copy, of our current fares, and then handwritten on it are recommendations I made to the Elder Care Management Board at its last meeting. These fare changes have been approved. The City Commission, at least the last 2 year-end presentations I've given you, have asked us about increasing fares. And I shared with you that we will do that. We are a partner, and we do know we needed to make some changes. Some of these fares, the biggest change will be, of course, our taxi on demand. And I'm not going to go deep into all of the details of this because I know I only have 15 minutes and I want to leave time for questions, but I specifically gave this to you so you could see the changes that we are making. And the biggest change is going to be after 10 o'clock at night, which will be Friday and Saturday night. We're going to go to $8 a person. Our current fares were $6 for the first, $3 for the second. We feel that that is an increase, but when you look at somebody that might be out enjoying themselves, 2 beers are more than $8. And it's for us to get them safely home. And cost of I don't know, I've heard of the cost of a DUI is, I don't know, sometimes I hear 1,000, then I hear 2, then I hear 3. So I know it's between, I guess, 1,000 and 3,000. So I think that's well worth a safe ride home for every passenger that we take. And that's why we made that change. And we're going to eliminate pre-scheduled rides out of town, put them all at a flat on-demand rate, which is a higher rate. We are getting more requests for out of town at Dickinson. And it's tough for us to do that with our staff size right at this time. As you know, and I guess I should have mentioned, for the community who are listening to this, public transit provides on-demand and pre-scheduled rides in the community of Dickinson. Our vehicles are equipped, majority of them, with wheelchair lifts. And overall, we have had tremendous growth through the past couple years since we took over public transit. My last few comments, we have grown. Since 2008 to 2010, 89% in trips, 98% in passengers. And that's the truth. We know that that heavy growth has been there. You requested some additional information from me at my last meeting a few weeks ago, and I have that for you. You asked how many bar crowd, people we are taking after around that bar crowds. And these are just estimates because sometimes our software does not give us all the information we need at our fingertips. But from January to March, we transported 672 people to and from the drinking establishments, plus 965 walk-ons. The walk-ons are the rides that majority of those, all the rides after midnight have to be put on as a walk-on. A lot of our bar car rides are walk-ons, meaning we don't put their whole name into the database. The driver processes them. All these 965, some of them will be daytime taxi rides that we get as well. That's why it's not a full number, but this is a very strong, good estimate for you. Hotel and airport rides were 526. About 50% of our customers, this is a guess, exceed the 5-minute wait time. That they don't come out as quick as we'd like them to, and that's what we're working on. Some of our customers it will be difficult to adhere to, and some it will. Approximately $30,000 of fare income has come in. This is an estimate as well from the Bismarck rides. You and I know that public transit promotes our community. It promotes Dickinson. It's a great for economic development. As our community has grown, we have tremendously grown. Our staff has grown. Our staff continues to need to grow. We affect commerce and hospitality. We all know that. Public transit, as I mentioned, our current subsidy of $52,500 comes from your general fund budget. I feel, and I believe some of my board feels, that additional funding I'm asking for is $47,500. I'd like you to consider looking at your hospitality budget and your economic development budget. If you pull a little bit from here and a little bit from there, we can make something work. We can. In conclusion, it's very, very critical to me as the director and to the staff, to the community, to you, to all of us that we keep public transit going. Increasing our transit staff salaries is critical right now, and in order to maintain current staff and to attract new staff, we have to address this. I need to address this like yesterday. No, last month. No, last year. It needs to be addressed. We need to do that. We need to offer a good salary for the staff doing good work for our community. We also need this increase because of the increased fuel costs that we're all having, and also aging vehicle replacements. I wanted to give you today as much information as I could so that you can make a good decision and the right decision to help us with public transit. If you need anything more that you feel I have not given you with disclosing the financials that were attached to the application that you can see to the budget for next year, if you feel we're over in any of those categories, I personally feel we run an incredibly lean company. If you take a look at the detail, they gave you detailed information of the details down to the vehicles. We are very, very good stewards of the money given to us. Very good stewards. And I am available anytime to meet with you or to answer your questions at this time. Fred's here as well. Just hope you seriously take some good look at the information I've given you before you make your decision. And we're here to do our part. And also when you look at that budget, I'm always committed to increasing all the revenues when I'm looking at them. Other organizations, other ways we're working. It's an ongoing. One thing I did not put in here that I did forget and that just came to my mind is we do need mid-management in public transit. And that's also it's very important that we do get some mid-management to assist me and the staff in keeping public transit running as smoothly as it has been running. So I guess I open up for any questions that you may have or any more information that you would like me to provide you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodakowski. in your 2012 budget, have you reflected then these rate increases that'll go into effect here in 2011?
Yes, my accountant is not here today. He happened to be ill, and so he wasn't able to be here, but he has put this together for the board's approval, and he has reflected the fare increases, staff increases in salaries, and sometimes I'd like it maybe I'd like to see salaries maybe a little higher than what it is here, but he does such a good job doing the number crunching. You know, that's probably one area that I'd kind of like to see the salaries a little higher on here.
But the answer is yes, right?
Yes, he has. The answer is yes, he has. And Steve has done a good job with our finances.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
On your agency income, section 5310 is 163,000, and section 5311. What are those?
Okay, 5311 is subsidy that we receive from the Department of Transportation.
Okay.
That's our state aid, and 5311 are the title of the funding that we get from the federal government.
All right.
50, some of that is 50/50, where we have to come up with 50 match, and some of it's 80/20. The 160 you're also going to see on the last page of number 4, under capital expenditures. I have been working with the DOT on $160,000 for a new software.
Okay.
For transit. And that's really important, and I put that in there because I'm praying that we get that from the state. We put a grant request in.
Okay. Now, in the budget we're looking at, this is just the transit part of the...
Correct.
And this isn't the meal part
No,
with
it's
the elder
not.
care part? Okay.
This is just the transit
Just strictly
services
transportation?
budget.
Okay.
Correct.
Got it. Well, those are my questions. How about other commissioners here? What do you have for comments or questions?
I have a couple questions. Colleen, the fees that we're looking at,
I'm sorry, were you to ask a question?
I had one question.
Regarding fees, we're doing a mid-year increase now. These new fees are going to take effect July 1. And when you look at this net income, that's anybody's guess, because what's really hard to predict and project will be, what will fuel costs be, 6 months from now, a year from now, we don't know. And then, of course, repairs and maintenance on our vehicles, that's another thing. Any of you that are in the machinery business, vehicle that you don't know, you drop an engine, those things can come back and really bite us. And so, regarding the increases, we took that into account when we did these projections. We wanted to separate out transportation the best we could, and that's pretty accurate picture. But we can do rate increases anytime we feel that we have to, like we're doing now. We come to the end of the year, and the fuel costs haven't changed much, and it's in our, repair and maintenance are starting to really hit us hard. All those other things, she comes to the board and says, we got to look at another rate increase maybe. Another thing I just want you to know, see that when you look at airport rides, bar rides, those things that, we look at and say, do we really have to do that? Those are where the rate increases are that we will raise significantly over some of our other fees, because we still deal with the handicap and the elderly and the very low income and so forth. So we have to be sensitive to that. So we're getting a little better at this as time goes on. So if we have to raise the rates again come January 1, that's what we're going to do. If this airport thing keeps, increasing the way it is and the bar traffic, that's where we're going to look and say, if we're going to provide that service. You could say that this increase that we're asking for in the subsidy, that $47,500, you could safely say that that really is all for the other than the bar rides and the airport rides. That's really what we pay most attention to. So you feel uncomfortable in subsidizing oil field workers to and from the airport and so forth, that's who's going to see the heaviest increases.
Mr. Jackson, you had a question for me?
Just to understand, make sure I understand your budget, those increases are all going to
Yes.
go under that section that's transit income, correct?
That's what my yes, my accountant has done that.
Okay.
I know you were here not too long ago at a regular meeting, and you had a very good presentation, and you had statistics on increases, and so, I mean, you've been really impacted, I think, in a couple of ways. One, your organization has really done a good job with the transit service, so I think you have satisfied clients out there, and so they're using your service. The other thing is, we've seen quite an economic impact here from the energy impact. How has this impacted your business, and like when you look back over the past 1 and 2 years, what percentage are you up now in terms of, say, rides that you're giving, or however you measure that?
How much our rides have increased?
No.
Or how much we've been impacted by?
Impacted, like.
Impacted tremendously.
Are the ridership up 10% or 100% or?
The ridership has been, I think I showed you that graph since we took over transit.
Yeah.
It's been steadily increasing. Each month it has been pretty steady overall with a line up. So that has increased.
But year over year, what percentage are you up? I know you.
We're up, I just took from when we took the taxi
Yeah.
over, because I was increasing the subsidy from that time, from the 50,000 that we used to receive, and that's what the previous cab businesses have received, and it was like 89 and 98%. And I believe from this last year to the year before, it was about the 68s.
that
From
what it was?
2009 to 2008, I want to say about 68%.
I know it was a big
60%
percentage
was
when you
huge,
presented, yeah. Okay.
Impact to us, it's hard for us to get around, bottom line. The traffic, increased traffic, I mean, just you and I going up north to south to east and west is like 1, maybe 2 times a day. Our drivers are going 200 times a day. And they're impacted tremendously with longer periods of time, increased traffic, more susceptible for accidents and incidents, because overall the ridership that's out there, it just seems like they're not stopping at stop signs. They're going through, or sometimes their lights aren't on at night. They're driving a little faster than what they should, so we have to do a lot more training on defensive driving. So that has impacted us, the ability to do the ride how we used to do it
You're
as well.
saying the other drivers are going through the stoplights and stop signs and driving faster, not your drivers?
Well, I'm sure, I'm not saying my drivers don't make errors either. I'm just saying overall, the ridership out there, and I think maybe you have noticed that as well when you're out there. It just seems like you have to be more cautious riding in the town of Dickinson today, even when you're heading to Belfield and to Kildare.
No question, just because the light turned green doesn't mean you shouldn't look
Correct.
both ways.
That's
before-
right, yes. But we're all human. I mean, and the other concern I have for you and I and everybody in this community is, and myself too, is the cell phone use is still very high while driving in our community. And it used to maybe be a year ago, you could do a quick phone call safely, and now it's like you maybe think you can do that quick phone call, but in your back of your mind, you're like, geez, I really better not, I shouldn't be doing this. Your back of your mind is telling you, oh, you should really stop and do this phone call. So that, I think, is something that has affected as well.
Well, I think you're doing the right thing by raising your rates. I know people don't like to pay higher rates, but I think you're providing a valuable service, and the rates that you're charging don't cover the cost right now because you're getting subsidies from the federal, state, and local governments. So I hope your clients understand that this is still a very good bargain for them, even at these higher rates, especially with the cost of fuel what it is today. Any other comments or questions?
President Johnson.
Mr. Kessel.
I know this is a topic that I asked you at our last meeting, and I'm hoping before this budget it's approved. There can be a reflection of the in-kind support that the City of Dickinson provides public transit as well, with your housing and your utilities expenses being covered by us. So.
And basically, Mr. Kessel, that usually how you do in kind for auditors and for all accounting is, I'll send you an email on it, it's the rent, it's going to be the utilities, and then it has to be the city telling us what it's worth versus us telling you what it's worth. But what I'll do when I get back, and I was going to make that comment, I'll send you a quick email on some items to take a look at, and maybe look at Public Works, what the utilities used to be before we came in there. And I think, Tina would have some of that information, and look at maybe on the average how much they've increased since we've been there. That might assist you in coming up with those numbers. And we welcome that opportunity to do that. Any other questions from the commissioners? Mayor? Welcome back, Mr. Frenzel. Thank you. And thank you for all your hard work with our city and being good leaders for us. We have a great community here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I just wanted to plug one more thing. I've been on the board now for several years, and the change that we've seen in our board meetings, we were thinking about going to maybe a meeting every 2 months, 6 meetings a year. It's impossible. Now we have to have a board meeting every month for sure, and sometimes we have executive board meetings during the month. Our time as a board member has quadrupled or maybe more, and I just want you to know it's still a non-paid board. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Gangler,
Yes, sir.
I just want you to know that the present mayor has been mayor for 11 years, and he's getting paid the same as the past mayor was. Do you remember who the previous mayor was?
Well, I'm sure there's people in the community that appreciate us. Thank you.
For our viewing public, Mr. Gangler was the previous mayor. Okay, well, domestic violence is next. They're not here. I see we've got the
think she's
CVB.
out there.
Is she out there? Oh, well then, we'll have her come in. Okay, I see her now. Okay, we'll hear next from Domestic Violence and Rape Crisis Center, and we have Darian Johnson here.
Good afternoon, Mayor Johnson and Commissioners. My name is Darian Johnson, and I am the Executive Director of the Domestic Violence and Rape Crisis Center.
And I'm Gloria Fichter-Rao, the Assistant Director and the Direct Services Coordinator at the Domestic Violence and Rape Crisis Center.
There's an African proverb that says, "It takes a whole village to raise a child." Our village has changed profoundly in the past year. Many families that live in our village are finding it very difficult to raise their children. You would be hard-pressed when talking with anyone who grew up in this area to not hear comments about how different life is now. As the director of the Domestic Violence and Rape Crisis Center, I can tell you that we too have seen changes. Our shelter is consistently full. We are dealing with an increase in the number of domestic violence incidents and also the severity of the violence to the families we serve. We struggle to help families find homes as the rents are rising and unaffordable to so many. Many families must choose between food, medicine, or rent. We are able to help with food and personal care items, but have limited funding to help with much else. We fear funding cuts in this coming year, as do many agencies that we work with. These are the situations we face. It's hard to not get frustrated and discouraged, but we choose to be positive. In the midst of the situations we face, life in the village must go on. We want to tell you about this village that we live in. We want you to know about the people who support us every day and help us to continue to do what we do.
Just to mention a few, there's our Prom and Party Dress Fundraising Committee, which came up with the idea to gather and sell used dresses and new dresses to girls and women at a reduced price. This event takes place annually, and it benefits our agency as well as community members. There is a family who lives in the country and brings us garden produce and fruit because they say they have more than they can use. At Christmas, the same family asks for a list of supplies we need the most, and they purchase and deliver them the week of Christmas. They assemble bags that contain a children's blanket and a teddy bear. These are given to the children when they enter the shelter, so they have something they can call their own. Then there are the churches from all of the 8 counties that we serve that make homemade quilts and donate them to us. These same churches are always there whenever we have a special request or just need their moral support and prayers. There is a woman who painted the entire inside of our shelter so that it can have a more home-like atmosphere for the families living there. We sent out a mass email and people responded by bringing in new and used home decor, and we are in the process of now redecorating our shelter rooms.
There are also the agencies that we work with every day in order to help the children and families that we serve. There is a strong network of caring people in this village, and I feel privileged to work with them each day. Even though we receive help from all of these kind and generous people and agencies, we need continued support from the City of Dickinson. We have had your support for many years, long before my time. You have been there with monetary support and moral support, and we hope that continues for many years to come. In closing, I would like to say that my staff and I are proud to be a part of the village in which we raise our children. There are problems, there are frustrations, and yes, things have changed. However, I think we must remember that we owe it to our children and families to be the village that will teach them right from wrong and keep them safe. And most importantly, we need to do this together.
Thank you. Are there questions, comments? On your financial statement, you show in the investment column nearly $183,000. Can you tell us what that's there for?
Actually, I will have Paulette Reel, who is our accountant, answer any of the questions you have regarding our financial information.
Okay.
Yes, we do have a investment balance of a little over $182,000. This is as of our fiscal year end, and this represents a very high point in finances for us. Some of our funding is a little irregular in terms of timing. Our budget tends to be somewhere in the range of $450,000 to $500,000 a year. So this represents a cushion, as it were, of 3 to 4 months of operating expenses. We feel it's necessary because we need to continue to maintain our facility, which can be quite expensive depending on the year and what needs to be done. But also, we're looking at very inconsistent federal funding. In the past couple of years, we've had funding cuts of 25%, and then that funding is restored. So our funding really changes from year to year. One of the reasons that our balance is high right now is that we had extraordinary support from individuals in the community this last year. Again, that's very difficult to predict and impossible to guess how that will impact us going forward. What we're doing with some of that excess is improving our shelter facility and improving both safety and security for our residents.
So if we looked at a series of past balance sheets, we probably wouldn't see that large of a
Correct.
balance.
This is about $50,000 more than it typically would be, and certainly from, let's say, 3 years ago, you would have seen far, far less.
And then on your expenditure side, under other expenses, you have $93,000. What would be samples of some of the larger expenditures that would be classified as other?
This disclosure represents cash flow. That's how we keep our records. The only thing that matters to us is cash in, cash out. So included in that other expense is our capital improvement line item, which this last year was about $30,000, represented safety and security improvements that we made to our facility. It also includes all of our food and shelter supplies, which is a very big line item. It includes all of the expense that's required to run our office, including computers and all of our office equipment. Another large line item is travel.
So those are really reoccurring expenses from year to year? Okay.
Absolutely.
You mentioned in your presentation, how change is impacting our community. Can you put a little more color to that in terms of how it's impacting your organization?
Right now, our goal has always been for the clients that come into our shelter to help them to get self-sufficient, get on their feet, and move into their own homes. The way that it's happening right now, we have the same clients in the shelter that we've had in there probably for the last 6 or 8 months, because there is no place for them to go. That's the changes that we're seeing. And again, in my presentation, I said we are seeing more severe incidents of domestic violence. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I don't know, it's kind of hard to put to words the changes we see, but the safety and security has definitely been something that, has been on the forefront always for our agency, but it's getting kind of scary sometimes. The people sometimes aren't predictable, and
One other thing that we're seeing a lot of that we don't have a lot of training for is technology, and the use of technology in stalking our clients or in hurting clients. And if you turn on any morning news show or any news show, every day there's a new way that it's used for bad things. It does a lot of good, but there's also a lot of bad. So that's another thing we struggle with.
How long have you two been working together now?
9 or 10 years.
9 or 10 years.
I was going to say 10, she said 9, so 9 or 10.
But I mean, you can definitely see quite a change from 9 and 10 years ago to today, then, in what you're being confronted with.
Absolutely.
We're seeing a lot more drugs and a lot more alcohol, I think. It's always been here, but it's much more prevalent. And when we see the severe cases of abuse, many, many times it has drugs and alcohol that was involved.
It's also hard for us to continue to meet the needs of some specialized populations, mental illness that isn't untreated, or drug and alcohol abuse issues that it's just really hard to continue to meet the needs of some of these populations, but we do the best we can.
Ms. Johnson, what is your current full-time and part-time staff, and has this changed in the last few years?
We say we have 9.6 people. We have actually 4 full-time staff, and then we have 2 part-time staff, and then we have house parents that man the shelter on nights and weekends.
And last year, same numbers, the year before, same numbers?
We've added, in the last year, we've added a child advocate part-time, and we've added a very part-time sexual assault coordinator, which we hope we will be able to make full-time, but the funding will determine whether or not that happens.
Mr. Kessel?
I believe your capacity is about 18, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm curious, from 2-3 years ago to today, how many times have you exceeded 18 on a regular basis? And if you can give amount of days you've done that, that'd be appreciated as well.
I don't know if we can give you the amount of days that we have exceeded 18. I can tell you that we are a full shelter, and many times we are finding that we are not appropriate for some of the people that need to come into the shelter. So I think it would be that would be a better way to say it, is that there are times when we have to take into account the safety of the women and children in the shelter. And like Gloria said, there are sometimes issues with mental illness or other things that would preclude them from coming into the shelter. That does not mean that we still don't help them, because like I said in my presentation, the agencies in this town are amazing, and everyone works together.
So currently, are you at capacity?
We are.
In the past, have you been at capacity?
Yes.
Okay. 5 years ago?
Okay, 5 years ago? Absolutely not.
Okay.
I would say, when I first started there, we actually had times when there was no one in the shelter. When we would forward the phones to our homes and answer them there. I would say in the past 7 years, that has not happened. But being at full capacity has been in the last, I would say, year and a half.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anything else here? Okay, well, I think as agencies go, your organization does as good a job as anybody.
Thank you.
So, Terry, we're running ahead of schedule. Are you prepared to go?
Yeah, I am. I got a message from the call that you guys were ahead of schedule, so.
Okay, thank you for being
Yep, you're welcome. I'm Terry Thiel, the Executive Director of the Dickinson Convention and Visitors Bureau. And 2010 was busy, and 2011 is even busier right now. Obviously, you know, as we're seeing through town, everybody's busy. We've experienced quite a growth factor in a lot of things. Obviously, you're seeing new construction going on. And even throughout the state, we've experienced growth. And that has been not just what's going on in the western part of the state, but also the state has experienced just general visitor attraction also. The North Dakota tourism numbers were out, and all across the state our visitation has been up, and that's due to a lot of things. One of it being now the most affordable state, you know, because of what's going on in the country, and also named one of the friendliest states. So the entire state is experiencing that. We're getting that. Plus, we're also getting that, of course, obviously what we're getting in now with the construction and energy workers that are going on. So with that, we have a lot of people coming in and asking us a lot of questions. Recently, we sent out the information to you guys as far as regarding 2010, the 2011 information, our marketing strategies, all the different things, our annual report, the goals of our office, all of that. So you should have received that in the mail. If you have other additional questions, let us know what, you know, those particular information. Our inquiries for 2010 were about equal to 2009, but our walk-ins into the office were dramatically higher, about 42%. What we've also done now is that on our tear-off maps, we list obviously where we're at with a green star, but we're also now, we put on and added this last printing job service with the green star, because as people are coming in right away, they see the billboard information, and so visitor information, and we're getting a lot of those walk-ins coming in. So we've done that, and we've also kind of kept track on a calendar of how many that are coming in, and we mark down specifically the request for job service. And we've tried to assist a lot of those people. Is that the norm for what we do? Probably not, but obviously we don't want those people walking out without information too.